Hello again. So today I was thinking a couple of things I wanted to share a little bit more about my story. I'm not showing my face and all that, but I think everybody would understand that, depending, because of what we are talking about and the struggles we're all having. It's very personal, very private matters. So anyway, but I just figured, some of y'all might, if you're listening, you might want to know, well, who is this guy? A little bit more of what my story is about pornography and stuff like that. So I was just a normal kid growing up, pretty normal family, but there wasn't any one thing that was horrible, because I've talked to men. That's another thing I want to talk about today too. But I've talked to other men who are dealing with this like me, and there are some horrible situations out there, and there were people that grew up and were badly treated sexually and all of that, and it's hard to hear, and it happens, and these men, I feel for them. I talked to one, and he's come out of it a lot, and become a great man, and he's the type of guy that he straight up told me his wife has full control over his phone and what is on it, because he can't trust himself, and he knows it, and he's accepted that, and he doesn't get on any internet or never social media, nothing. He doesn't do any of that, and it's because he knows he can't, and it's because of his childhood. It's not his fault. It's just the way he grew up and he was treated. It was horrible. But so there's that extreme, and then there's the other extreme, and I guess I might be on the other extreme because I had a good childhood. But one thing that I think was the struggle that I didn't realize at the time was that my family, my dad never talked to me about any of this, like porn or anything like that, and so that was hard. And I didn't think about it at all, like it being hard back then. But now I look back and I'm like, oh man, that was not good. Like because I didn't know what I was doing, and I got caught up in I grew up in a time where computers were kind of not new, but they were becoming more and more available, and so everybody was getting household computers, and stuff like that. And so when there was exploration there, kids were looking things up, and I was too, and that was, when the internet came out, it kind of became a crapshoot for a little bit. Still, actually, I take that back. It still is. It's even more so now than it was then. But anyway, so there was I don't think my parents' generation understood at that time what was happening to our society, because they grew up in a time where you either had to physically go to an adult video store or physically buy adult magazines or videos, and that was basically it. There was no other option to look things up. Well, internet came up and all this stuff, and computers, and now we got phones and everything, and it's just anywhere you can find porn, anywhere, anytime, if you have any type of device. And that's what's scary. And so I grew up in that, and it just happened. And I, just like any teenager, it does happen. And then I never talked about it. That was kind of the biggest thing. Never talked about it with anybody. Never talked about it with my dad. And just went on, this private thing. And it just kept, for years and years and years. And I always thought when I get married, I thought, well, it'd go away, because, I'll get to have sex with my wife and all of that, and I won't have to worry about it. Well, I was wrong, because even the times in our marriage, younger times in our marriage when we were more sexually active, it was still a struggle. And I didn't realize it then, but it was an addiction that I didn't realize, because and I kept thinking it was no big deal, but it was, and not realizing it was. So, kept going, kept doing it even through marriage, just trying to hide it and stuff. And there were a couple times where my wife did find out, and it was really hard, and there was a lot of tension there, and I kind of broke her trust. I praise God she didn't, leave me or anything like that, but it's, even though that happened, we still never really continued to talk about it, and I still struggled with it, and it would get better at times, but then it would just keep getting worse, until one of the biggest things that happened later in our marriage was my wife actually had an affair. And so it kind of just shook me a lot, but I kind of had to realize something, and we're still together, but I kind of had to realize that I was not innocent in all of this. Now, don't get me wrong, if that's a horrible thing to have an affair, either side, husband or wife, whatever, that's horrible. But I don't think, and I used to, even after that, I even thought, at the time, I thought, well, at least I didn't have an affair. At least I didn't go to another person. But, more and more, as I'm getting older, I'm realizing that, God, I don't think God puts levels on sin. I don't think God compares one person's sin to someone else's. And that's, I don't know, I feel, and thought about this the other day. I just now remembered this. If you take your sin, say you're just some normal guy, and just dealing with porn, whatever. No, but you're not a murderer. Let's say you're not a rapist. You're not. So you talk about some of the worst crimes out there, and you compare yourself to that, and we kind of think, well, at least I'm not that. Okay, but get this. See if I can say this right. You are, or me. I'm gonna talk about me because I don't know about any of y'all, but for me, I am closer to the murderous rapist in morality than I am to God and to Jesus. We are so far from God's perfect morality and righteousness that we are not near as different as a complete psychopath. I don't know, that's just something I thought about. And so when I say or compare, okay, my sin to my wife's or whatever, and it's well, no. We sinned. I sinned, she sinned, and guess what? We are one. Whatever I do or she does affects the other. No question. And kind of like what I talked about in the last video, it may not see the effect. It's not an outward, porn and masturbation, but it is affecting you on the inside, spiritually, mentally. It is. You can't get away from it, and so therefore it's affecting your wife. If you're married. So anyway, that's kind of my story. I mean, I know I could go into more detail, but I don't want to. I don't like to talk too much about one thing, but. The other thing I will say, because for me, one of the biggest kind of things I had against me is I just didn't talk about it. My dad didn't talk about it. I said that before. So what I learned was if you are, well, and let's just say if you're sitting there today and you're dealing with this privately by yourself, not talking to anybody, and you don't want to, obviously, that's horrible to have to talk to someone about that. But I have been blessed with some men in my life, like through my church. And if you're someone that doesn't really have like someone to talk to, can search, like find someone, someone you trust, but you got to get to know them. You can't just meet someone and be like, hey, I struggle with porn. You got to get to know them. Although there are some people, there was one guy that I met, but he knew why I was meeting him, and I knew why he had done a testimony to a men's group, so we knew. So, and then he straight up asked me about porn, but that was a different situation. But find someone, because when I started talking to some men that I trusted, a couple of things happened. Number one, I did find there are men out there that don't struggle with this as much as we do. That is true. But then I also found out there are way more men that struggle with it than I thought, even in my own inner circle, people that I see, every week. And it is a thing. It's not uncommon, and we hear that. I don't know, I've heard that for years, but so when I came out and talked about it for the first time, it may not have been the first time. I think there wasn't. Well, it was 3 men. I'm trying to think. It was 3 men. We were just meeting, chatting, talking about church, from our church. And what actually happened is 2 of them I don't really talk to as much anymore. They don't tend to deal with it as much, I guess. But one of them is still my friend, and we are still talking about, like, we meet periodically, and when we meet, just me and him, we are completely open. Like, we talk, he struggles with it a lot, because we talk about it. We talk about everything, and it means a lot. And then it came. I ended up sharing with a few more. It depends on the situation as we go. And there was one man that, anyway, we started meeting over the summer, because we had some extra time over the summer, almost weekly. We read a book together, and we discussed it, and so that stuff like that, and that is huge. It opens up, it helps a lot to let things out. And we know this, especially sometimes men, we don't admit this, but we know that this is true if we let things out and talk about our feelings. I know that's doesn't sound good, but it does actually help. So talk about it. And then ultimately, last thing I'll say is probably more important than anything is talk to your wife about it. I mean, at some point in time, find some way to open up. I feel like our spouse we and our spouse, like we and our wives, should be able to work through things like this together. And I feel like that is part of the commitment we make to be married for life, till death do us part. Like, that is it. Part of it is digging deep with your spouse, even when they are, whether you or them are going through something where they're sinning or whatever. And if y'all talk about it, and work through it together. Because one thing me and my wife realized after all that, I mean, we did almost split up, but we realized, we're both completely and utterly screwed up. Like, both of us. And we both admitted that. And that's why we're still together, is because we're just going to be screwed up together, and we're just going to try to help each other. And that's what we did. Okay. Let's see. See you later. Love you. God bless.